Welcome everyone to the Zorich Podcast. I am Chris Zorich, and welcome to the Conversations with Leaders and Legends. On today's show, we have a very interesting guest. The first one we've had that have actually started for two Division I programs, a former Gatorade Player of the Year, and co-founder of Mogul, a platform that matches current and former student athletes with businesses who would like to work with them. Brandon Wimbush, sir, thank you so much for being on the Zorich Podcast.
Chris, thanks so much for having me, man. I'm excited to be here with you.
Absolutely, man. I'm excited to talk to you. Well, you are too, man. Come on, man. Anytime you take that field, you become a legend. You know how hard it is out there, man.
Right.
You know how hard it is out there.
I'm
excited to talk some Mogul, to talk some name, image, and likeness. But before we get there, you've had an interesting background being so young. What are you, like 15, 16 years old? You look like you're like 12. I mean, you look amazing.
I'm 24, man. I appreciate that.
Oh, my God, baby.
So do you, man.
Pardon me? I
said, so do you. You look great.
You are very kind. That's what happens when you're a guest on the show. You've actually done this before, so that's great. So talk to us about growing up in Jersey. It's I mean, having the success you had, but also kind of talk about how you got involved in football and stuff like that.
Yeah, so, I was speaking to somebody, I think it was Michael Lito. So Michael Lito is the, CEO. It's a long backstory, but CEO of Rise Sports. That's J.L. That's J.L. Smith's company over there.
Okay.
And he asked me a similar question, and contrary to, like, I don't know if it's popular belief or some of those stories that are just so hard, and devastating. My path was pretty, I had a pretty clean-cut path. Other than growing up in a single parent home. My mom raised my brother and I. My dad was there. But for me, it was, I was fortunate enough, knock on wood, didn't have many injuries that I had to overcome, Chris. Like, didn't have much of, a tragic life growing up. Again, I had the support that I needed to get me to where I wanted to be, right? And people that believed in me, and that was the biggest thing for me growing up. So, but started off as a baseball player, man. Played all positions. Was a utility guy. Went on to play at St. Peter's Prep. My brother is 4 years older than me. Went to Teaneck High School, which is our public high school.
Okay.
Had ups and downs. Definitely was more of the hard head, right? Love him to death, but definitely was kind of the guinea pig in terms of the high school to college experience. He ran track in high school.
Wow. Okay.
Was a 6'4", 215. You would think he played, wide receiver, but he was a punter, right?
Wow.
So that was kind of always right. He ran like a 4.5 and was the punter. But mindset, right? It's all about the mindset when you have those types of abilities. But athletic out of the mind. Just went through ups and downs. So my mom kind of saw that experience for him going to the public high school, and great town, right? Great community, but just wanted different for me. Knew that I was kind of wired differently, right? Like, my brother is such a hustler. He gets things done, but just wired differently, right? He was a frat guy, Greek life. Went on to run track at Rutgers. But my mom wanted something different for me growing up or going to high school. I'm 4 years younger than him, so it's kind of the perfect timing. So she sent me all the way to Jersey City, Chris, to St. Peter's Prep. We grew up in Bergen County, Chris, so you might know Don Bosco Prep, St. Joe's,
right?
Bergen Catholic. Those are all schools that are 15 minutes from where I grew up and easily accessible for me, right? And I actually got recruited by some of those coaches. Or I shouldn't say that. I don't think you can recruit in high school. But my mom told to send me an hour away, man. And 2 trains and a bus later, I'd make it into Jersey City to one of the best experiences 4 years later of my life. And obviously, you mentioned it, Gatorade Player of the Year. Went to school with guys like Minkah Fitzpatrick, Gordon Fox, John Hilliman, Savon Huggins. I went to the same school Will Hill went to. I don't know if you remember that name, but Just a very historic program. Our head coach was there for 30 plus years. Just retired last year. Was also the athletic director. Only Jesuit school in New Jersey. All boys school, but just great experience. And then obviously made an easy transition, as you can imagine, right? To ND caliber type of school. So, but yeah, Jersey was great. Love it. Food is amazing. Don't know, when you're from Jersey, that's the two things. It's the family. Everyone seems like their family, and then the food. You can't be disappointed by the food. But
well, you were kind enough, but you wound up skipping over a bunch of stuff. I mean, I want to talk about having to. So you had to take two trains. That's all 4 years?
That's all. Well, last year I was able to drive in.
Okay.
Splitting time with my mom. We only, shared one car. So
sure. So what time were you getting up at, like 5, 6 in the morning?
6 a.m., man. 6 a.m. So kind of taught me, that grind from early on, right? And obviously we both had to experience it at ND. I don't know if you ever had a Bayless, Matt Bayless type of guy, but he had us up at like 4:45 some days.
Oh yeah.
At ND, Chris. So that's different. I don't know if it's a new school thing or if it's an old school thing, but those early mornings we definitely had to experience at ND.
Well, it was those. Hold on one second. It was those real old school ways that kind of really changed the program around. When Holtz first got there, when he talked about in the first team meeting that tomorrow they were going to start, I think it was winter workouts or whatever at like 5 in the morning. And it was like, what? And so literally guys got up at 4:30, they went over to the field, and his philosophy was, because they had a lot of issues with kind of not being a team and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he figured that if you guys all share the same throw up, or excuse me, if you guys share the same garbage can you guys are thrown up in, you guys are going to become teammates. So yeah, it was something that lasted all his tenure there. So I'm very used to that. But I mean, how was practice? I mean, you're practicing, you're getting home late. I mean, you got your equipment and stuff. I mean, probably not taking your equipment home, but I mean, that kind of sucked. I had to take the bus back and forth. Well, what time were you getting home?
From high school, yeah. Getting home around 8, 9, man.
Didn't have to do homework, and I mean,
yeah,
how were you as a high school student?
Now that I think about it, it's crazy. Definitely crazy. And some kids like Minka Fitzpatrick lived an hour and a half away, Chris. So he would ride home with Coach Hansen, who was the head coach,
right?
Because they lived in the same area. So, and the head coach is the last one to leave, right?
Of course.
So my man was getting home. And that's a story that a lot of people already know, but Minka's story is definitely inspirational in his family. But so yeah, he was getting home around I'm sure 9:30, 10 o'clock some nights. But yeah, right, like the whole process was just exhausting, but it definitely helped me build kind of the person I am today. Right?
Sure.
I'm grateful for that.
Did you receive a scholarship at St. Pete's?
Yeah, I think a partial scholarship. It was expensive. I think we were at like $15K a year. Like, there was no joke, right? So there was no way there was no way my mom was able to finance that whole thing by herself.
So you mentioned obviously Mika, but I mean, were there other kids? Was it known? I mean, your coach had been there for 30 years. Was it known that a lot of kids from that school got Division I scholarships, Division II scholarships, and stuff like that?
Yeah, I don't think it was known. I think like the guys that like I said, Will Hill, Savon Huggins was like the number 2 running back in the country, but he ended up at Rutgers and then another school. And then John Hillerman was another running back. Minka, myself. I'm definitely missing names, but but yeah, we were a really good program, really good team. That's honestly, Chris, that's a lot of what Jersey ball is like good team football, not like a lot of like Florida. I feel like it's more individual players you'll find pop up from these, schools, but Jersey's like especially those schools I mentioned in Bergen County. It's like these tough Italian kids, Chris, that just love to hit.
That's awesome.
So it's awesome, and it's a great experience, man, and it's fun as hell. So, but yeah, it's really good team football that's being played up there.
So, did you guys make any playoffs, or how far did you get? Or
yeah, we won the states.
Nice.
Our senior year, but we lost our junior year. Minka and I and my buddy might have played at Stanford, and a couple kids that actually went to Fordham that were really good. We lost our junior year to Jabril Peppers, who went on at Michigan, and then our senior year we beat 𝐸𝐨𝐿 Gary, who's a defensive lineman that went to Michigan. So they both went to the same school, and we lost, our junior year, but we got revenge our senior year. We play at MetLife Stadium.
That's awesome.
Our state game. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah.
So you mentioned what was going on with your brother. What was the recruiting process like for you? What schools were you interested in, and kind of, what lessons did your mom and your brother learn from kind of his situation?
Yeah. So I think just, speaking on my brother again, like the track, he didn't get recruited till late, man. Like he's 6'5". His kind of growth spurt, not in terms of height, but in terms of athletic ability and achievements, kind of came senior year for him, Chris. So I think he was jumping close to 50 on the triple jump. I think he hit like a 49 something, or either 49 or 51, and that's like really good, right? So that came in like late senior year. Track is outdoor season is almost summer, so that's when his recruitment started kind of picking up. And my mom was doing that by herself and learning the process of taking trips. And again, track is a little different, right? So for me, it was going to these camps. My recruitment started a little bit earlier, thanks to our program, right? Our high school program, where guys, there's coaches in and out, right? Every off season, looking at guys, so my recruitment started a little earlier. Definitely was in, more so into the camp scene and traveling and the 7-on-7 thing. Gratefully, I was good at both 7-on-7 and actual football. A lot of these kids today are just 7-on-7 guys, but that helped out a lot. My mom was willing to do that. People that supported me, my dad would be around and help out as well when he could. And I'm just grateful for those types of experiences and that type of exposure, because a lot of kids don't get it. And even the opportunity to travel to some of these schools and go on some of these recruiting trips and compete in some of those camps as well. So, yeah, it definitely started a little bit earlier for me, and I learned a lot from some of the older kids that were at our program that process.
Well, it's so interesting to see that. You came from such a great program, and would be interested to think about what your final schools were that you were choosing, you're thinking about going to.
Yeah. So I was committed to Penn State, Chris, and I was committed to Coach Franklin. So I initially I'd taken a trip. There's a kid, right? Speaking on this on learning, there was a kid, Trey Bell, committed to Vanderbilt and Coach Franklin, and went to go play for Coach Franklin, 2 years older than me.
Okay.
Coach Franklin leaves, goes to Penn State. I'm getting recruited my junior year. I commit to Coach Franklin. He's an awesome guy, awesome recruiter from my standpoint. My mom loved him, wanted me to go play for a black coach, right? She went to Penn State, so there was that whole dynamic.
Oh, wow, okay.
My dad's side of the family is from Pennsylvania, so the Wimbush family was excited in PA, and so that was junior year. And then Chris, my second game of the season, my senior year, we played Bergen Catholic on ESPN on 9/11. I threw for five touchdowns, ran for one. It was televised, and just a huge rivalry game. And Coach Matt LaFleur, who's the coach at the Green Bay Packers now, calls me up like that Sunday or something and says, hey, like we want you to come visit, we want you on campus. So I think that'd take like a week or so, and I'm out there for the Stanford game.
Okay.
And I'm with Equinemius St. Brown. We fall in love with the school. We fall in love with obviously the opportunity to connect, given how good he was and is. But so yeah, it was Notre Dame, Penn State, and Stanford came in the door late for me.
Wow.
And then Ohio State, right? Big Ohio State, and Miami was the last one for me.
All right, now I was talking to somebody, and maybe this isn't true, but in order to be recruited by Stanford, did you have to write like an essay or something like that, or talk about why you wanted? Really? So that's true?
You have to take AP classes, man. Like you have to have these certain amount of like I would have had to. My buddy that went there,
right,
had to take a gap year, and I was just, to be honest, I was like, I'm not. If I can go to Notre Dame, it's kind of, I put them on the same like pedestal,
right?
But you have to take AP classes. So my buddy and I were considering taking these summer courses to help us get to the point where we can actually qualify for those AP classes.
Jeez, that's crazy.
It's crazy. Man. It's crazy. So you have to have a 500 on each part of your SAT too. At that point, it was a 3-part. So I think I hit that my second time actually taking the SAT. So
okay.
I was okay on the okay on the SAT requirements, but the AP classes were no joke, and I wasn't going to be in summer. Like I just wasn't.
Well, I'm curious to hear. I mean, please let us kind of inside your head, or tell us the conversation that happened with you and Coach Franklin. I mean, what happens there?
Yeah.
Well, and then also your family. I mean, everybody's thinking you're going to go to Penn State,
Yeah. Quick convo, man, and quick convo. He hung up on me, to be honest with you. Oh. It was one of those. I was in the car with my head coach from high school, because he's been through this. Like he is on the phone with Urban Meyer. Just
sure.
One of those guys that's really well connected in the college space. So I was like, Coach, I want you to be on the phone, or I want you to be in the car with me, or do this with me. I called him up. I was like, hey, Coach, like really grateful for the opportunity. Thankful for you as a human, and but I'd taken a visit to ND, and I this is the decision I'm making. I think that was it, and he hung up the phone on me. So, but man, like you gotta respect college. You gotta respect an 18-year-old's decision, in my opinion, to even make a phone call like that, to make these life-changing decisions. Chris, like you've been through it, obviously. These are decisions that go down, and they're monumental decisions for your life.
Yeah, and they're life changing, and we always preach kind of the 4 for 40, but that's true. I mean, I'm still, my best friend is my college roommate my freshman year at Notre Dame, so the idea that, I mean, this is something that lasts a long time is important. So what actually, I mean, you talked a little bit being on the trip. Was your mom on the trip at Notre Dame, or did you take it by yourself?
She was, I think she was there. She was there. Yeah, I remember going into the DoubleTree. I don't know if you guys had the DoubleTree. But
I'm not that old. Yeah, we had buildings. We had electricity when I was in school. Really? Damn, man.
I meant for the home games.
I'm kidding.
The home games, we go to the DoubleTree.
Okay.
And I remember being there. She was there. We were with Coach LaFleur.
So did you make the decision right then, or did you go home and think about it, or like what was that process?
I think I went home and thought about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely went home and thought about it. Had a great time. But yeah, I think I took like 72 hours to think about it.
So what was that process? I mean, I'm sure they kind of pushed the whole academic thing. You didn't have to take AP classes, but I mean, what was the process of kind of you making sure this is going to be a great place for you versus kind of the pressure from your family and everybody about Penn State?
Yeah, I don't think it was much of a process than it was me just kind of having this intuition around like being comfortable on campus and understanding the family dynamic that they spoke of, right? Spoke so highly of, and you really can't tell, Chris, until you're like there, fully ingrained. I believe, and then you're even more appreciative when you graduate. Some people are, or some people just, it's like, right. Like I've experienced people within my class that didn't have the greatest experience, but they still graduated. And then me, I loved it. I was benched. I loved it. I loved it though. Football included. Like I look back on it and it's like, what experience like this throughout the rest of my life is ever gonna, compare over a 4-year span. So, but the process was pretty easy. I went back home, had a discussion with my mom. She was all for the academic, obviously putting school first, right? So that's important for really any family, or most families, and they were just better in that realm. And I knew I wanted to be a part of their business school, and they had, I think, maybe the #1 business school at that moment.
So you're there, and I mean, you, like everyone else, want to have a chance to play kind of your freshman year.
Yeah.
You actually do play a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was listening to another podcast you were on, and you talked about one of your kind of most memorable moments, and that was your first time kind of taking the field. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, Chris. I mean, you get it too, man. Running out that tunnel, trying to close my eyes and envision that moment. It was a night game under the lights, 80,000. How many consecutive games have we sold out? It's crazy. But against Texas, I think we were ranked. There's nothing like that, and you build a special bond with, especially your classmates, your freshman classmates that summer, and then leading into that September 3rd game, it's like, this is what you were preparing for, man. So, and as a freshman, you're like a little dummy just running out there. Like, I'm not thinking I'm about to play. I'm just thinking I'm about to go enjoy this night game, this build up. And I don't know what dorm you're in, but I was in Stanford, and they do that first game, I think, dive in the pond. And there's just a bunch of activities and events going on, and it's a special moment, man. So the whole weekend was special. The whole week leading up to the game was special. The pep rally, and then just running out of the tunnel. Again, I'm not thinking I'm playing this year, so my mind is on learning, building my body up, getting ready, getting primed, learning the system, that type of thing. But I'm sure you're gonna get into it, and then a couple weeks later, I'm out there. So
did your mom have a chance to come up to any of the games, or your first year?
Yeah, she came up to a couple. I think she was at the UMass game where I scored my first touchdown.
Okay.
She was almost, I think, in the middle of an interview, which is crazy time during my run, because that was the season, Chris, that we were doing the Showtime thing.
Oh wow! Okay.
You remember that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
With Terry Tillery, and Joe Schmidt.
Yeah.
And Deshaun and Malik and Sheldon Day were kind of the focus is, the focus of that show. But I think, the UMass game, they found my mom because we were beating up on them. And I had gone into the game unexpectedly. So it was a good kind of clip to have. And I had, broken off for a nice little run that game.
Nice. Yeah. So that kind of experience, I'm sure we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but also kind of want to talk about your kind of non-football experience. Yeah. And I want to say this because I think, to do my research, I found that you really took advantage of the opportunities you had over the summer. And if I'm correct, you actually interned over the summer at a couple of different places. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep. I had spent some time in New York. at KPMG, which is one of the big four accounting firms, and then also in Palo Alto at Excel, and both through Notre Dame networks and connections. People just lending their hand and saying, "How can I help?" And the biggest thing for me was gaining experience, right? And you can't gain experience unless you go experience something. So that was my thing, and I think those paid off really well for me and helped me build up my network even further.
Well, during my day, you wound up getting a job with like a construction firm or something like that. Or, I mean, I had a chance to work for a law firm over the summers. Were there a lot of guys that took advantage of the opportunity to intern over the summer?
I think there were. I think there were, I don't know if they offered abroad when you were here, when you were there, like the opportunity to go abroad and do this, a month of studying. But a lot of guys took advantage of that, right? Like that's
Right.
really, you don't get to go to Europe, on a paid trip, ever in your life again, right? So
Right.
I did that my junior year. I went to Russia, but it just speaks to the opportunities that Notre Dame, gets to offer their athletes, even if it's just for 5 weeks. But yeah, there's a bunch of guys that even stuck around in South Bend, worked at the investment office, worked at local, finance, companies, did different things, went back home, did internships. But yeah, Notre Dame guys definitely do whatever is going to be best for them.
So now you've kind of taken this kind of internship very seriously, I'm assuming, and you're able to start a private equity club at Notre Dame. How did that happen?
Yeah, so thanks to a connection I made, Tim Connors, who's actually an advisor and investor in our company today, through his venture studio. Tim is a former managing partner at Sequoia Capital, but I made the connection to him when I was working at Excel, and come back into the fall, and he has this idea around creating Notre Dame's first venture capital fund. So our venture ecosystem at Notre Dame is still young and still developing. So this guy is kind of at the head of that, and he thought I'd be a good advocate and a good kind of co-founding member to have on campus, Chris. So this was an awesome experience. I was able to team up with guys like Sam Mustipher, a couple women's basketball players, and create our own team. And then we also, I think there was 4 teams, and they were each led by top venture capitalists. One was Kevin Compton, who's the Compton Ice Arena. So he was one of the guys that led one of the teams. There was a couple other, lead VCs that led, teams of 4, and the teams were comprised of the students. Our team was comprised of 4 student athletes. So this was an awesome experience. And what we would do is, do the due diligence of any deals that came across our lead VC's table. So he would pass them along and say, "Hey, this is a company that I'm considering investing in. Do your due diligence. I'll provide the capital. If you guys want to make an investment, you can be in. You can be in on the round with me." So that just venture capital is something I'm interested in, and that was obviously a great experience, and it's continued to develop that program on campus.
That is amazing. A lot of people, I mean, have you talked to any of your friends that have gone to different places? I mean, are they as involved in kind of the student environment that you were, or?
Yeah, I don't think so, man. I think it's just something that at Notre Dame, it just kind of grabs you. Like it's like there's so much to offer on campus. It's like, how do you not want to be involved? And I learned that from guys like Corey Robinson. Like I was his roommate freshman year football, like a traveling game.
Right.
And I didn't I thought I was like, I was like, what is this? I was like, what's going on? Like, what is Notre Dame? Because he was so different, right? You know exactly what I'm talking about, Chris. And some of these guys that embody the Notre Dame campus and the spirit and the culture. And I'd learned so much from Corey, and I didn't really know. Like, if I would have known that Corey was going to be the first or the second African American student body president, and everything that he stood for was, some of the values obviously I admired, I would have. But again, I was just a new freshman coming in, first fall football season. There was a lot going on, but I had valued time with Corey. But yeah.
You're listening to the Zorich Podcast with our guest, Brandon Wimbush. So the idea of kind of Notre Dame being this kind of different type of place, share with us maybe one of your kind of non-athletic favorite moments kind of around campus.
Yeah, that's a great question. I had taken this puppetry class, right? This is going to sound weird, but puppetry.
I'm sorry, puppetry?
Yeah, puppetry.
Okay, wait, hold on. I thought that was like at like University of Michigan or Miami where you take puppetry or underwater basket weaving. They actually had a puppetry class.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't go, right? But awesome class, awesome experience. Like, would have never thought. Like, we put on this whole show, obviously with puppets. It was amazing. But besides that, I think the dorm, like my dorm experience, Chris, was fantastic. Again, I was in Stanford Hall, and I roomed with a kid from South Bend, a legacy family.
Non-athlete, right?
What's that?
Non-athlete, right?
No, yeah, non-athlete, right?
Okay.
So that part of the Notre Dame experience is so rewarding as well. You get to build connections from people that are outside your locker room. So the dorm, the puppetry class, and then there's so many more, man. But I definitely have to kind of think back and consider some of those moments.
The exciting thing is that, a place like Notre Dame, you can afford to kind of have these great experiences, but, you've had a chance to kind of experience some amazing opportunities on the field as well. Can you share with us maybe kind of one of your most memorable experiences on the field?
Yeah.
Outside of scoring the touchdown while your mom was in the stands talking about you. So.
Yeah. No, that was crazy. I think the Michigan game had come off a year that I just wasn't excited about, like production wise. And obviously, Ian and I were in a battle heading into the fall, heading into the season. So the Michigan game, I felt good. I still didn't produce how I know I could have. But we won. It was a rivalry game. Again, it was under the lights. But that moment was special. And then the Florida State game as well, senior year. It was the senior game, right? So I had been benched for the past 6 weeks, and we were 9-0. And it's a big game, right? You're 9-0. You're Notre Dame, right? If you keep winning, you're in the playoffs. So Ian gets hurt in the Northwestern game leading up to the Florida State game. Florida State's not that great of a team, but I had gone in, had to prepare, and the big thing for me was the defense stepping up. It was kind of made an emphasis by one of my favorite coaches, Coach Lee, who's the head coach at Vanderbilt now. Who was the defensive coordinator at the time, had kind of said, let's help Brandon out this week. Let's put him in the best position possible, right? And that's kind of special, from a quarterback standpoint, of the defense taking kind of this onus and putting their neck out there to help you out.
So how was that experience? You've had these great opportunities. You've taken advantage of them. And then all of a sudden, as you said, you're benched. I mean, what's that process? I mean, do you think you're a failure? I mean, kind of walk us through kind of like, like you're like, oh, shit, I'm not going to play. I mean, what happens after that?
Yeah. Your mental, right? Like that's not something that you prepare for to be benched. Like you prepare to be the starter, you prepare to go play on Sundays, and you just, once that happens, it's like your head is spinning, right? It's like what happened? It's exactly what happens after this. Like you're very everything's self-centered at that moment. But gratefully, I had good people around me again to kind of make me understand that even though it was about me, right? Like this was my moment. This was a team effort. We were undefeated. This could be a great year for Notre Dame, for the program. And I knew my time would come. Like I knew whatever God's plan was for me, that it was going to, be drawn out that way, right? There was no stopping that. So definitely one of the most, my greatest experience of being able to learn and adapt and go through adversity. So just knew that it had to be the next week, right? Like the next day. What's this next 24 hours going to look like? I could change the world, or I can just go in like hibernation and be depressed. And that's not my personality. So chose the former and wanted to help the team in any way that I could.
And that's interesting because a lot of kind of individuals in your situation wouldn't necessarily kind of think that way. Yeah. It's something that no athlete wants to go through, yeah. But when they have to, it's how do you respond, right? And that's what kind of adversity being a leader is about. One of the things that they've talked about, and if you want to see a leader, put them in a situation where there's some adversity and see what they do. Yeah. And it's just one of those things where when you look at kind of your success and what you've accomplished, that's one of the things, although it wasn't pleasant, right. That's one of the things that you can really hang your hat on. Yeah. And when you get into other situations like that, being 24, hopefully you haven't seen a lot of them yet, but eventually you will, and you'll be able to kind of look back on that and really kind of say, man, this is what made me the individual I am now. Yeah. Yeah. I literally go through that. Also back to Matt Bayless, like adversity in the weight room was one of my favorite things. Like even though I wasn't like a heavy weightlifter or like crazy in the weight room, the adversity that he would make us go through, and everyone that you speak to that played that, during our time there would talk about the leg press, the leg pushes, right? We would almost die under those leg presses, but he was doing it intentionally for adversity, Chris. Like, so you felt uncomfortable, and I kind of got away from that over the last year and a half after being out, but I kind of found it again that putting yourself into uncomfortable positions only helps you, flourish and develop and grow. So, but yeah, that was one of the moments, obviously being benched, that I had to kind of take that outlook on life and say, how am I going to help? How am I going to make this experience, make me better? And it definitely has. So you've had a chance, I mentioned in the intro that you actually took a graduate transfer to UCF. Kind of what was that process like? And was it kind of, were you calling schools around? Were you getting advice from folks? What's that process like?
Well, it's different today, I think, than it was 2 years ago. Being that the transfer portal now is very accessible. I think you got thousands of athletes enter into the transfer portal every month, and kids just looking for their best opportunities. But for me, I was blessed, having been recruited coming out of high school pretty heavily. So a lot of the contacts in terms of the coaches were still there for me, and they kind of knew that I was out on the market now, and so it was more of that kind of component dynamic, rather than me having to kind of source, the opportunities for myself. So again, I was just blessed to be in that position, and it's kind of it's weird going through the recruiting process again. That's not something that you think you'd have to double down on, but yeah, it happened, and I was grateful for the opportunity that UCF gave me.
So before you left, there's a social media post that I read that you kind of thanked everyone. And in there, you also thanked Jack Swarbrick, the athletic director, and also Father John, the president. Can you kind of share with us how those names popped up in your thank you?
Yeah. Well, Father John has we have the same birthday.
So yep, there you go.
That's why his name popped up. But he was in the locker room after every home game and gave me a hug and said congrats after every home game. How could I not be grateful for our president doing that, taking his time to have a conversation with me, and for sharing the same birthday. So it's just a bond that I was grateful for. And then Jack is somebody that I spent my birthday at his house, and just a guy that was in my corner. It's in my corner today, and I built a great relationship with him and the entire rest of the Swarbrick family. So somebody that I admire. I think people are. I don't know. I don't know. I've heard some people don't like Jack. I'm like, I don't know, but somebody that I look up to, admire the way that he works, and from what I've seen, I admire the way that he interacts with other individuals. So, those two were definitely people that I needed to point out in my my grateful message.
Well, and I wanted to ask that because oftentimes you'll see an individual leaving and they may not include those names, but if they included the athletic director and the president, it was just kind of just because they felt they had to. Yeah. So when I saw that, I was kind of curious to see why you did, but I can understand why you would do that. So you're making this transition from the cold, harsh, ridiculous weather in South Bend to So, I mean, was that part of the reason why you went to UCF, or?
Yeah, it doesn't hurt, right? It doesn't hurt. You were in Chicago. Where are you at now? Are you still in Chicago?
I'm Chicago. Yeah, I'm still in Chicago. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're a lifelong.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yes. I'm a glutton for punishment.
I mean, I enjoy it. I also enjoy the seasons, man. So I don't mind the fall and the change of seasons. But my family, my grandma, again, is down here in West Palm. My grandfather was pretty sick at the time, I believe. This was beginning of 2019, and my grandfather was a little sick when I was making the decision. So, I'd been down here in Florida leading up to that decision, and it just kind of was like, all right, there's a great opportunity for me here to actually come and compete, given the quarterback situation at that time at the University of Central Florida. And it was closer to the rest of my family. My mom's in Atlanta. Georgia Tech was another option. They were just going through that offense change. So they were changing from the I think it was the wing tee to more of a spread.
Sure.
And I just didn't think they were going to be ready and set up for a dominant season at that time. So UCF, again, the quarterback situation, the coaching staff I met with, I thought they were good for me.
There was talk possibly of maybe Penn State, or did that door slam kind of shut for you?
I'm trying to remember. I think it was like slight conversation around Penn State. There was something that popped up, but I don't think I was ever considered. I don't even think I was ever contacted from those. Okay. So, but I definitely remember there kind of being like a slight rumor.
So, how was that experience UCF? A lot of folks don't have a chance to kind of see what kind of two different schools are like. Was it, and obviously you're talking about, a superior, and unfortunately I'm going to say this, huge big time school like Notre Dame, and you're talking about a school that's in, a lower tier conference. What was it like kind of adjusting to, not like you're washing your own clothes, but when you went and got the gear, there may have only been like 2 shorts as opposed to 20 you got in Notre Dame. What was that experience like?
Yeah, definitely just they are a group of 5, newer program, right? I think they're only 50 years old, right? Compared to we were like 150 years old. So they're also learning, right? And they were just learning how to win, and they had won a lot in 2017 and 2018, Chris. So they were definitely, and they are on the a great path,
right,
and Horizon to being one of those dominant programs. And they just have to continue to keep winning, and that's what I was going down there to kind of help them out and do. But yeah, right. There was things, nutrition staff. They had just hired their first nutritionist. Like weight room improvements. As you win, more money comes in. So they had some money coming in, and they were making improvements to those types of assets. But obviously, infrastructurally, like, yeah, there was a lot of improvements that needed to be made, and I think they've done a great job of that. And then obviously now they have a well experienced and a winning coach on staff. But yeah, there's a difference, and maybe even within the locker room of like the mentality around the guys. Like, I think Notre Dame was just a little bit more like professional and polished when it came to kind of the strategy and the processes that were in place, right?
Okay.
Like a corporation, right? Like our startup at Mogul is not on the same scale as a KPMG or an Amazon, right? Just because of the novelty around our existence in the space, right? So it's the same kind of concept, but I feel like we're on a good path, and we've had wins and we've had losses, so everything's kind of a learning experience.
So you were talking about the success they had kind of going into the couple of years before you got there.
Yeah.
How do you think that kind of winning culture kind of affected the time you were there? And if you can kind of compare the culture in the locker room or with the guys with being there and Notre Dame.
Yeah, I think the winning culture was great for them. Like, they recruiting wise, think about that, right? Like, you keep winning. It's exciting. Like, you want to play in Orlando, like you were saying, right? It's not a bad place to play. So, and it's easy to recruit. There's 70,000 students there as well. So it's a phenomenal experience and opportunity for some guys. And then even you talk about the quarterbacks and Mackenzie Milton being from Hawaii, and then they're able to recruit another kid from Hawaii who's going to be one of the top quarterbacks this year in college football. It's just a cycle that continues to repeat, and that's how you continue to grow your reputation as a college football program. But yeah, I think from the standpoint of the locker room and the guys in the locker room, there was guys who had won 0 games. Like, I think before they won those 12 games, Chris, they had won like 4. So that was kind of like, we had gone 4-8 too, but the year before that we were one of the top teams in the country. So we understand what winning was like, but some of the guys that were on the team didn't understand what winning's like, and sometimes you got to act like you've been there before, and that just wasn't the case for some of these guys. So I get it's all a repetitive cycle.
So you finished there, and I mean, what did you take puppetry there? Like, what classes did you take kind of for that semester? How many semesters were you there for? Just the one, or?
I was there for 2 semesters, Chris, and everything was online. Again, 70,000 students. You can't be that kind of, diligent, right, in terms of like academic processes. So everything was online. I wasn't, to be honest, I wasn't really focused on the academic piece of it. I just wanted to get down there and see if, what else I had left in me.
Sure.
And, hopefully make a run at playing on Sundays. But obviously it didn't go that way. But classes weren't a huge thing for me. I obviously had to maintain a certain GPA, and they do a good job within the football program of monitoring the athletes. They have a really good academic service there, and yeah, that was kind of my main focus was ball.
So was it, when you say kind of, they obviously wanted to win as well, but who was the coach during that time?
Josh Heupel.
When you were there, right? Okay. I mean, What was it like kind of hearing his speeches versus kind of Brian Kelly's speeches?
I don't know. What are your thoughts on overall coaches' speeches? I don't think any of them are like. I've been around some coaches, and I think those two head coaches, like, speeches don't, for me at least, like, I don't know. There's not much of a separation. But obviously, Coach Kelly is Coach Kelly. He's done what he's done for the past, couple of decades now. Great resume. And I'm sure he's recycled a lot of his speeches over those years, right?
Come on, man.
You kind of have to. So Coach Heupel is kind of learning. He's still kind of progressing and has new things come out of his pocket every day. But yeah, I think, I think they're similar in terms of, their message, at least, obviously. So that was definitely interesting. And something I didn't really consider while I was in the moment.
Right.
So when you're bringing it up at the end of football practice, you're just ready to kind of go take off your pads and, like, kind of get on with your day. But yeah.
Well, and so you kind of closed that chapter, and you were actually working for a little bit, right? Before your involvement with Mogul. Can you explain a little bit about what you were doing?
Are you referring to my time with 𝐉𝐨𝐼𝐿?
Yes.
Yeah, with 𝐉𝐨𝐼𝐿, that Chicago-based startup. I don't know if you do any angel investing, Chris, but those are really good guys, Notre Dame guys. Have created this awesome tech company, speaker technology, and I was helping them on their marketing. Within their marketing efforts, being that it's not much. There wasn't really much going on the marketing side, being that it's a hardware B2B company. But they've done phenomenal. They actually just finished and closed their Series A at a $3 million round. But they've made so much development over the past couple of years. And funny story, one of the co-founders came up to me with a speaker that looked like this brush and had like an oval, and there was like a space in the middle of this. And he was like, this was freshman or sophomore year of college. He came up to me and was like, dude, check this speaker out. This is like this Bluetooth speaker I'm making. I don't know. He was explaining it to me. I had no idea I'm like, you're like, cool, right? Like, dope, man. Like, happy to support however. But then kind of went unknown for the next 3 or 4 years. And then I saw what they were doing, and I thought I could help them raise some money, help them on the marketing side. And that's what I did for, I think it was close to 6 months. And then also other working experience. I worked with Brandon Marshall for a little bit as we were raising money for Mogul.
Okay.
That was really cool, being under his wing for a couple months down here at House of Athletes, which I'm sure.
And then you run into, or you may have been talking to, kind of a Notre Dame alum as well, but also kind of a former high school, who am I looking for? Rival. In your boy, Aiden, right?
Yeah.
Sayel. And he had an idea. Can you kind of walk us through kind of how you got introduced into your current project?
Yeah. So 2019, NCAA, Mark Emmert had supported the rule change in October. So Aiden, hard worker, Notre Dame guy, was working in finance at the time, set aside time to write up a business plan, right? This business plan was no joke. It's 10 to 15 pages. I think we still have it, around creating a two-sided marketplace. So the business plan really hasn't changed much. And then a couple months kind of go, kind of go silent. And then we connect again in 2020, early parts of 2020. So long story, he connects with Joe Schmidt because Aiden's looking to do something else outside of finance. Joe was talking, he said, you should connect with Brandon. You might have some ideas. We started talking about doing some venture capital work. And then there's more support that's voiced, and this business plan comes back up again. So we're talking, and he's telling me about it, and I'm like, dude, like you need an athlete perspective. Like you need someone who's been in the shoes to create, a product that is going to suit them best. So I had interest. I was training, so I told him, I was like, dude, I'm still training for the NFL, hoping that something transpires for me there. But on the side, I'd love to kind of help, gauge some interest from the fellow athletes, right, that are going to go through this and obviously get experiences.
Well, and the end result is Mogul, which, I mean, really kind of is going to provide a great opportunity from kind of a better perspective than I think the NCAA could provide.
Yeah.
And you can kind of explain kind of what the legislative process was to folks about the whole name, image, and likeness issue, because I think this is a very interesting topic, and to have you on, someone who's really going to make a difference in that area, I'd love for them to hear from you.
Yeah, so I mean, as far as back as I know, obviously the NCAA has never allowed athletes to make money. But back in 2019, California's Governor Newsom, famously on the HBO show The Shop, LeBron's show, had signed the bill to allow California athletes to make money starting in 2023. So that was kind of the spark, around the NCAA allowing the athletes to make money, right? And but again, that's 2023, so it's so far kind of away. And then there's the Alston versus the NCAA case, which is more towards educational benefits, right? Like us receiving calculators, laptops, Chris, as athletes, opposed to endorsements and sponsorship money. But the fact that the NCAA had lost the case just helped propel this movement even that much further. Given our birthrights, right, our publicity rights of being able to make money off of the name that's on our back. So a couple other states, 7 being exact, had supported legislation that was going to go into effect on July 1. A couple of those states are Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, I believe, and New Mexico. So those are some of the states that were set to go into effect on July 1 to allow those athletes to make money. Without any type of federal legislation, those athletes and those schools would have had obviously a huge competitive and recruiting advantage, if you think about it, right? So we knew that couldn't be the case. So there needed to be either legislation or regulation imposed by the NCAA or by Congress. Neither of those are the case. So we have what we have here today. It's just kind of a free-for-all, open gate, no regulated landscape, right? Every athlete make money. Schools implement or impose their own regulations, which are very, there's a lot of variation and deviance from each school's laws. So the space is the wild, wild west, which everyone's probably heard of, and that you mentioned today. But we're expecting, and it's going to help us out on Mogul side, kind of a federal legislation over the next 3 to 4 months that would help uniform everything that's going on across the country.
So can you also explain kind of what you guys do? Because this is not like an agency issue. This is not like you represent athletes. I mean, talk about what the platform does.
So the platform, what we've done at Mogul, Chris, is we've created a 2-sided marketplace that allows the athletes to connect to brands and businesses for marketing and other monetization opportunities. So typical endorsements, sponsorship deals, in-person autograph signings, in-person appearances, car commercials, radio appearances, social media campaigns, which is a heavy one. And then we've also we have a huge philanthropic mission and component of our business model, which we're excited about. Help continue to the accessibility into youth sports, being that it's become like a pay-to-play machine, right? So such a huge part of my life that I wanted to do something to give back there. We also teach our athletes financial literacy through our partner Money Vehicle that's housed on the platform, and we have modules there that allow the athletes to understand, what income is going to be taxed, how to file a tax report, and everything, kind of under the umbrella of understanding taxes, which I would have had no understanding about, right? And still in learning, right? So, but yeah, our platform is very holistic. We allow the athletes to source these deals locally and nationally, connecting them with local and national brands, all the way to that compliance component where, as you know, Chris, a lot of what you do is being monitored by compliance in the university. Everything you do in your life, from every meal you eat to every hand that you shake, is being monitored. So we have a component that we are proud of that takes care of that process for the athlete.
So are there any competitors out there now, or did you guys kind of come in right literally at a perfect time? And how is this different? I explained a little bit before about individuals really kind of doing it on their own or trying to hire someone to kind of do it.
Yeah, there are definitely other marketplaces out there, but our competitive advantage is our ability to empathize with the athlete, go through the process with them, make them understand that we're here for them. Our product is athlete first, founded by athletes. So, my most important focus is maintain the eligibility of these athletes, right? So, post some of these other products and platforms that are out there just to make it a buck. And then, the family members. My mom probably would have been one. I don't know, actually, but to want to help. I understand they want to help, but some of them also are trying to make $1 off of their cousins, which is inevitable. But those people have no idea. They're not a registered agent. They don't know how to negotiate a deal. They don't know what a contract looks like. They don't know that they're signing their cousins, rights away for life. Those types of things, are going to go unnoticed. Even the tax part of it, right? So there's going to be these repercussions that come at a later date for a lot of these athletes, and it's just going to take one that starts the trend, and it's like, all right, now we need to do something about this space. How do we regulate it? But yeah, there's family members, there's individuals, there's athletes that are doing it by themselves, and again, it's just going to take one of them to screw it up and get sued or something, and then that's where our platform comes in.
And that's where kind of my whole issue with the whole NIL policy in the NCAA not coming up with some concrete work, right? Because I was fortunate enough to write an op-ed for the Chicago Sun-Times a couple weeks ago, and it was published. And literally, I called this issue opening Pandora's box, because you have allowed student athletes to quote unquote get paid for their name, image, and likeness, but you haven't allowed them to learn how to do it, put parameters around that, and they're finding ways. I mean, there's a myriad of issues that haven't been brought up, or if they have, we as a society just decided, hey, as long as the kids are getting paid, let's not worry about it. And I'm just so fearful that something's going to happen. And as you mentioned, it's going to take this one kid who, for no fault of his own or her own, is going to be involved in something that he or she may not understand.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it already, and it hasn't been to the extent where there's a huge monetary component that's a part of the deal, but some of these athletes are signing things, and again, they just have no understanding around what they're signing, right? So there's going to be these proposed issues with some of these deals, and they just, I hope and I pray that the schools and the NCAA come in and say, this is, these are the rules, this is how you regulate it. Or the schools hire someone that can help them with, contractual agreements or something. But I don't know, man.
I mean, well, that's not going to happen because they're just coming off of COVID. Yeah. If they were lucky, they were able to keep everybody. They didn't lay anybody off.
Right.
And now all of a sudden they have to hire somebody else, or they just give it to compliance, right? And tell them, hey, you know what? Here's another issue. And we all know our compliance offices are, they're working crazy hours there. And so now you're going to throw in something that says, hey, is a $500 appearance, is it okay? Or can you qualify this? Is this better than the opportunity the kid may have somewhere else? And I just think that's really where my issue comes in, because at the end of the day, I mean, the NCAA has been fighting tooth and nail about trying to give student athletes more time for class, right? Mental health is a huge issue. Now they've just thrown this in and said, hey, you know what? Go for it. And by the way, you do it however you want. And I just don't think that's fair, because I mean, literally you have 18 to 22-year-old kids who have no idea what's going on, and their family may or may not either. I mean, I did marketing when I got to the Bears, and I paid people for that. Yeah. You couldn't tell me at 18, although I would love to have some money, you couldn't tell me at 18 what was a good deal or what wasn't a good deal. I mean, I don't know. My mom didn't know anything. And so that's where my frustration comes in, because we literally, the NCAA just said, you know what, hey, here's the keys to the car. You guys want to get paid? Here you go. Yeah. And I think the interesting thing about this whole thing is, and this is kind of my soapbox, Brandon. I'm sorry, man. I just get fired up about this. It's crazy. So I'm excited that there's good people out there doing what you guys are doing. But the schools are they have to be totally excited about this, because they've totally avoided the issue of the school's revenue, right? Yeah. So this has nothing to do with the school's revenue. Right. The school's like, you know what, we're good. Hey, you know what, go ahead, we'll get paid. And the school's like, thank God we can keep our money, and they'll be happy.
Yeah. I think, to your last point, I don't know if it overlaps with the topic of amateurism, right? Like almost paying the athlete through the school's revenue. But I get what you're saying, and I think it's going to increase the school's revenue. To be honest, like think about the fan engagement now from all over the world, right? Like you're connecting with brands, and these brands have all these, international even audiences, right? So like, and obviously then the fans are going to be more engaged with the schools and the schools' athletic programs, and tickets are going to be, more tickets are going to be sold. But it is a good opportunity for the athlete, and as long as they can do it right, hopefully, then I think it's going to be great. But definitely understand your concerns.
Well, and then it's also the idea of, I mean, what happens to the kid who finds himself in a situation? He was a high school phenom, goes to the school, gets paid, gets great endorsements. Let's say, anywhere from $50,000, $100,000, whatever it is. Came from a kind of chaotic background. Maybe buys his mom a house, maybe a car or something, and then at the back end doesn't turn out right. Doesn't make that next level, which they assume they're going to do.
Yeah.
And now, I got to pay a mortgage now. I got to pay a car payment. What is that?
That's true.
And Brandon, this is the part that really gets me, is that there's so many vultures out there that want to take advantage of these kids, right? And so now they see this as a prime opportunity. Parents might not know anything about this. The kid sure doesn't know anything. And here's a situation for them to make some money, or at least be influential in a conversation that these kids are having with folks. And I just see this, if not done properly, really going down a really tough road for these kids.
Yeah, that's a great point that I haven't even considered halfway. But but yeah, like I just think there needs to be some form of regulation set in place. And yeah, I think it's just gonna take one, right? Like some schools are not letting their kids engage. I think like the University of Hawaii has been slow to approve any of these deals for their athletes. Some of these schools, they have something set in place where there needs to be like a 7-day requirement of disclosure of the engagement, which we built into our platform as well.
Okay.
So like those are some of the components that make me feel a little bit better about the space overall.
Well, and then I also like the financial piece that you guys have as well, right? And it's something that will hopefully allow them to kind of understand the types of opportunities that are out there, but more importantly, how to either manage or take care of that. Because at 18, I mean, my mom and I were on public aid. I never filed a tax return until I was my first year with the Chicago Bears. And I had to hire an accountant, right? I mean,
Yeah.
are we going to see 18-year-old kids trying to hire accountants now? I mean, it's scary.
Yeah.
And without proper legislation, they've really kind of, said, hey, anything goes. And that's why, you refer to it as well. I'm like, literally, it's the wild, wild west out there. And then, I mean, I think I just read somewhere that Alabama's quarterback has the potential to make $1 million, right?
Yeah.
Now, I know the schools can't be involved in that, but who's to say that somebody on the Alabama staff, didn't, hey, Joe, can you give us a market analysis of what you may think? So now it's almost like a recruiting point where Alabama was the first school to come out with it and said, hey, our quarterback could potentially make $1 million.
Yeah, marketing
is not even playing yet. So now all of a sudden, hey, I can kind of throw that into a little recruiting spiel.
Yeah, marketing. Nick Saban does it best, Chris. So I'm sure he's not close to $1 million in NIL endorsements, but given the brand of Alabama, over 4 years maybe, yeah. But we'll see. We'll see. It's so early. And maybe we can come back and have another conversation, hopefully within the next 12 months, revisit this on the same day next year and see.
I think that'll be great, but it also has to be exciting for you guys as well, because you're going into this new space and, either good or bad or whatever legislation you hear, you have to adapt to it, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's fascinating for you guys, but I mean, what have you guys talked about maybe partnering up with schools or having conversations with schools, or how's that conversation?
Yes. So we can't work with schools directly. It's against the law.
Right.
So if you offer a solution to the school and you get paid by the athletic department or the university, then you can't work directly with the athlete, which we are doing, right? And we're offering a marketplace. So, what we've done with the schools is we've built a good reputation and have been close with compliance offices and officers to just say, here's our process. This is kind of the data that you'll be receiving, because we want to work closely with you, but, we can't do anything on a formal basis.
Yeah. And I only say that because, I feel that there's no one in the student athletes corner. Obviously, some individuals like yourself in Mogul, but outside of you guys, and I say that only because you've had that experience, right? You've been there. Yeah. But I mean, who's in their corner?
Yeah.
Because oftentimes mom and dad, I mean, we talked about it before. Mom and dad might not even be in the corner. They might want to. They see their kid. Everybody thinks the kid's going to, go pro anyway. So, hey, my kid's going to go pro. I need to market this. And there have been so many cases we've seen in the past where, unbeknownst to the kids, their parents are making side deals with folks.
Right.
And that's really just kind of what terrifies me, is that you're going to have these kids in these situations that as parents, as our society, we're supposed to be smarter than this and give them the knowledge to make these opportunities happen. Or if not, then put legislation in place that allows a set of rules. That's all I'm asking for. Just give us some rules for these kids to succeed.
Right. That's all we're asking for as well, too. So we'll see. We'll definitely see, man.
Well, man, I'm very excited. Oh, one more thing I want to talk to you about. Can you explain a little bit about how you talked about the non-for-profit piece that Mogul has as well? Can you kind of talk about that and how that's affecting? I know I saw something. I think you guys did something in South Bend with some kids.
Yeah, we've done a couple things, but what we're going to do is donate a portion of our proceeds to local youth athletic programs for things like equipment, gear, travel, registration, etc. And we're doing it through a partnership with Every Kid Sports, who's well established in the space, and is excited to partner with us and potentially work with college athletes as ambassadors themselves. And I think they just partnered with Dick's and Under Armour as well. So again, just a well-respected entity in the space, and has done this for a long time. So we're excited about that partnership.
That's awesome. And one last piece, I know, I got some information going across the bottom of the screen, but can you tell kind of athletes and also businesses as well, kind of how they can get involved and really kind of what's the benefit for businesses as well? I mean, will they go to the website and fill information out as well?
Yeah. So businesses can find us, like you said, got it down here, www.mogul.online. You sign up and you register as a business. If you're a local business, our thing is that it helps you build your brand. You have people coming and putting eyes on your brand, on your business, engaging with, these athletes, these college athletes who really create the social fabric of these communities and these college campuses. It's a great way to permeate these college campuses and these college markets. And then you just become more familiar with the athletes, right? Which never hurts. And then we're also on Instagram at get.mogul, and then also on Twitter and LinkedIn as well. So we're very accessible.
Brandon, this has been great. I've learned a lot. More importantly, I even though I'm a defensive lineman, I kind of like you as a quarterback. I don't say that to very many people. The only person I can really say that to is about Tony Rice, because we've spent a lot of time together. So outside of you and Tony, I mean, you guys are the only quarterbacks I kind of like. So
I'll let Tony know. I appreciate that.
No problem, man. Dude, this has been great. But a little bit more importantly, I think what you guys are doing is doing it considering there is no legislation on these issues. You guys are really doing it the right way. And I think that if it's going to happen, put individuals in positions that have at least seen or experienced these things before, as opposed to somebody who is literally just going to knock on your dorm room door and offer you $500 to appear at the car dealership. Yeah. I mean, there has to be some legislation for that. And, should a kid take cash as opposed to a check? I mean, it's too hard for there to be so many loopholes involved. And I think working with you guys, and this is not a kind of promotion for Mogul, but the idea that there's individuals out there that are doing what you're doing, but more importantly, kind of care, I think that's important.
Thank you so much, Chris. That is a nice little plug. I won't go without it saying, but I appreciate it.
Hey, man, if you're going to do it right, you got to do it right. Now, if you were like some city slicker talking about, I'm going to give these kids cash and everything else, then I can't have you on the show,
Yeah. No, I appreciate you having me on, man. This is awesome. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity here.
Absolutely. I'd like to thank everyone watching and listening to this podcast, along with our other podcasts. You can find on my YouTube page at youtube.com/ChrisZorich50. as well as on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the subscribe bell to be notified when we have new content. Also, check out the description below, as we will have a list of books from Amazon by folks who have been on the podcast, like Coach Holtz, Joe Montana, Jerome Bettis, and others. I will also have a link to your website, Mogul's website, and I'll also have a link to the Sun-Times article that I talked about, so folks can kind of get my idea as well. Brandon, thank you very much, man. This has been great.
Chris, thanks so much, man.
All right, man. Go Irish.
Go Irish.